That's right. You're listening to another episode of the Co-Main Event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists. And for the last 13 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Ben Folks, once again, no shortage of stuff for us to talk about on this week's show. You had Nasruddin Imavov go out there over the weekend, pick up an important victory over Kyle Bahalo at UFC Fight Night in Paris. Who knows where that leaves him now in the middleweight championship pecking order, but we'll talk about that, I think, on this show. We got some listener mail coming up. We've got exciting updates on both Ronda Rousey and Jon Jones vis-a-vis fighting out there on the South Lawn of the White House. So I know we're very excited to talk about that. But before we get into any of that, man, this weekend coming up, September 13th, Frostbank Center, granddaddy of them all, down there in San Antonio, Texas, Diego Lopez and John Silva, featherweight main event of UFC Noche 3. And man, it's hard not to romanticize and reminisce what we had last year, isn't it? When you start talking about this year's UFC Noche, because we did it up big. We did it up big last year.
Hold on. Are you saying that you don't think a fight night event that seems like we got down to plan D or E and we're doing it in San Antonio, which was also not our first choice, and we're also doing it the same weekend as Canelo Crawford, and we're also maybe this time not creating a fully immersive viewing experience that takes us through the rich combat sports history of Mexico? You're saying you feel like this is a little bit of a downgrade?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
that is what I'm saying. That actually is exactly what I'm saying.
It will be interesting to see what we do as far as the in-arena experience.
Nothing. I can answer that question for you.
Okay, but remember the first
mariachi band.
That would honestly be something. Remember the first one? They at least did some shit for the first one to make it feel like, okay, this is a little bit different. And then the second one, it was Dana White's personal passion project that he did just to prove to the haters, Chad. All you haters that said he couldn't do it at the Sphere. He went over the top, even as the entire time leading up to it, the TKO executives were like, look, this is Dana's one time. He can do this. And then we never want to hear about it again. And then we turn around, we end up, making plans, reshuffling plans, making new plans, resorting to backup plans. And we end up here. Good fight. John Silva, Diego Lopez, good fight. But also, you kind of built up the UFC Noche thing, and it feels like I looked up this week, saw an ad for it, maybe while I was watching football over the weekend, and I was like, oh, shit. Is that this weekend? Because that's kind of where it has fallen to, which is a considerable drop-off. They got to do something, though, right? Like, they can't just roll it out there and have it look exactly like every other fight night.
I mean, maybe some graphics on the screen. Mariachi band. I bet you don't see much. I bet you we don't do much at the Frost Center down there in San Antonio. I bet what you get is a regular ass fight night.
We're not even gonna have the ring girls all done up in with the stuff like they did last time. Remember that?
No, like the sugar skulls or whatever they were. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. Come on.
I mean, you might as well, right? Like, it doesn't really. Is Dana White even going to be there? That's the question. Or is he going to be over at Canelo Crawford?
Oh, yeah, he's definitely over at the boxing match. Come on. I feel like, even with my low expectations, I feel like you're being a little bit Pollyanna-ish about what we're happening.
The UFC president would actually go to his own event?
It doesn't even say. If you look this thing up on Wikipedia, it says UFC Fight Night Lopez versus Silva. also known as UFC Fight Night 259 and Noche UFC 3 and UFC on ESPN Plus 117. Third in the list. It says Noche UFC.
I'll tell you what, if you go over to UFC.com, that's the official website of the UFC, Chad. You pull up the homepage, and you see right up top there in the main spot, you see Canelo Crawford. It says embedded fight week begins for the once in a lifetime event. And then there's a link here to watch the embedded event. And then next to that, it says 2 epic events, September 13th. Well, one really big event and then also a different event. So that's what we're dealing with. Also, though, among the top stories, and I'm going to be interested to know how we decided what the top stories are. I don't necessarily know if we're going by traffic numbers, but number one is exclusive Noche UFC action figure available only at Walmart. And it seems to be a Brandon Moreno figurine with the Mexican flag and a a heavy bag that's branded UFC Noche. So also there's a hat. Maybe there's a UFC hat. It's a tiny little figure, and then I guess a tiny little hat that's going to go on a 3-inch Brandon Moreno figure. So that's exciting news. I can see why that'd be the top story.
So the figurine is Brandon Moreno.
They claim it is. I got to send this to you because you tell me if you look at this and you would immediately, like if you just saw the figurine on its own, if you look at it and you'd be like, that's Brandon Moreno, I know that man anywhere. Because I don't know if that's really the kind of situation that we're dealing with here. But it does note that only 1,000 units are being made, making this a rare piece of UFC history. So it comes with, like, especially now that I know the figurine is 3 inches high, it puts all the rest of these little pieces in perspective, because it also comes with a fight poster that the fight poster's got to be absolutely tiny here. Well, that's one of the 2 epic events that you've got on tap here for this weekend.
There's no way Dana White is there. Now, granted, Brandon Moreno, he's from Mexico, right?
He is.
But he's not on this card.
Come on, man. Now who's nitpicking? You can't expect Dana White to show up, the branded merch to contain somebody fighting at the event. We're piecing this shit together. So Brandon Moreno might actually be there. There's a better chance of Brandon Moreno being at this event than there is of Dana White being at this event. Also, Brandon Moreno, if you come to this event in the United States of America right now, I would advise you to have some documentation on your person at all times verifying your identity. Otherwise, we are in the just scoop them up if we hear them speak Spanish and find out later if we have committed an egregious human rights violation mode of the United States right now. Just word to the wise.
Now that you mention it is possible that UFC Noche is just a trap.
An elaborate immigration sting?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just to catch some people up.
They got to hit those numbers, Chad. They got quotas to make. They got to get their nut.
Not only is Brandon Moreno not on this fight card, this could be anyone. This figurine.
That's what I'm saying.
This could literally be anyone.
You see that, and there's a whole lot of people where you're just like, if you put a different name on that packet, like let's say, I know this is just me just spitballing here, in the event that maybe we didn't sell all 1,000 units at Walmart.com, maybe we take some of those figurines out, we slap them in a different box later on for some event, because you look at that thing. And, you got like a little fighter pose, the fighter hair. That could be a few other different. You put the free spirit tattoo across his neck. You could have a Caio Borralho, a figurine here.
Ken Shamrock commemorative figurine. Kenny Florian. I don't know. There's a lot of people this could be.
Yeah.
If you're Diego Lopez and Jon Silva, how you feeling about this? Because maybe you get the call, right? And they're like, hey, man, want to make you the main event over at UFC Noche. Maybe you get excited. Maybe you're thinking it's going to look like you're in a video game like it did last year.
Somebody told them, right? Somebody told them. Somebody was like, it's not like somebody said, hey, you want to fight at this year's UFC Noche? And they were like, oh, cool, at the Apex. And they're like, well, not exactly. At the Apex of San Antonio, the Frostbank Center. You heard of the Frostbank Center, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that after, the Grateful Dead or whoever got together at the Sphere, their next stop was the Frost Center. So they gotta know. Yeah, we're calling it the UFC Noche. Also, because it would be reasonable for both of them to ask, wait a minute, so it's us guys? We're at the UFC Noche thing? I thought that was kind of more of a themed event the first couple times we did it, and now we're doing a fight that frankly makes a lot of sense, has real ramifications for the division. Honestly, should be a fun ass fight that I'm sure somebody will fill Dana White in on later. But it also does seem like we gave it a try to do some Noche shit here. We were going to go down there to Mexico. Their arena wasn't ready. We were going to maybe try to put some title fight stuff going on there. And then we just kind of said, well, fuck it.
Diego Lopez, the improbable fun rise of the Fallout Boy. Remember, he came in short notice. Movsar Evloev put on a good show there back at UFC 288. We were thinking, this is a fun guy. Don't know how many fights he'll win, but like to watch him. Lo and behold, he goes out there, strings together 3 wins in a row. And then we're like, okay, this guy might be something. Then he goes out there, beats Dan Ige. We're thinking, okay, all right. Then he beats Brian Ortega, UFC 306. And all of a sudden, we got a contender on our hands. And then he loses to Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 314. It feels like the Fallout Boy plummeting back down to earth a little bit. Goes off as more than almost a 2-1 underdog against Jon Silva. Jon Silva's minus 238. Diego Lopez plus 195. I hate to say it, because I've been down since day one with the Fallout Boy.
Yeah. Well, when he would show up and you would see his haircut and you would remember which guy he was.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. I bet against him once without knowing it. Remember that?
And it wasn't until you saw the hair. The moment you saw the hair, you were like, oh shit. I forgot which guy this was. Yeah.
I fucked up. I realized once I saw the hair. We're dealing with diminishing returns here, aren't we?
Well, come on. He lost to Alexander Volkanovski. He was in that fight. Alexander Volkanovski, I know we saw him get knocked out by Islam Makhachev and we saw him get knocked out by Ilia Topuria. But what that means, especially the second time when he lost when he actually got knocked out in the rematch against Makhachev, he took that one on short notice. It was a bad fucking idea. He came back and fought Ilia Topuria when it might have been a bad fucking idea. I think both those guys still beat him anyway, but he lost to 2 of the very best in the world across different weight classes, basically. That doesn't mean Alexander Volkanovski sucks. Alexander Volkanovski, of the people who can make 145 pounds right now in the world, probably still the best guy, or at least right up there among the best guys. Diego Lopez lost to him in a fight where he had some real moments. He had some real opportunities, but he also just seemed like maybe he didn't have the experience or the fight IQ yet to capitalize on those. Couldn't figure Volkanovski out in time. Couldn't capitalize on those moments where he hurt him. But I don't look at that and be like, well, we've seen what we need to see from Diego Lopez. He sucks. He was lucky to have made it that far. Now let's send him back down the ranks and see if he can hit every branch on the way down. I don't think that we're in that territory. I think this is a good find out fight to see where he is after that. Because I think Jean Silva's a guy where you see him and you're like, all right, that dude seems to have it. We don't know exactly like how that's going to match up against some of the better fighters in the division, but Diego Lopez is a really good test for that. Whereas Jean Silva is a really good test for where Diego Lopez is at. Plus, fighting style wise, doesn't it just seem like it's going to be a banger?
Mm-hmm. First of all, I don't know how you sit over there and try to pretend like me saying that we might be dealing with diminishing returns with Diego Lopez is some manner of affront to Alexander Volkanovski.
You're kind of acting like, okay, if he didn't win that one, then he's not going anywhere.
That's not what I meant to imply. Certainly not against Volk. But I'm just saying, you have this improbable climb up the mountain to the championship fight. You lose it. The guy you lost to is now the champ again. And UFC matchmakers are going to put you in this fight, albeit in the main event of probably the most anticipated UFC Noche card of all time. That was sarcasm. That's sarcastic, what I said there.
Okay.
Going to put him in a fight where he's almost a 2-1 underdog. I agree with you. If he wins this, maybe he's back. Is he, though?
Is he, though, going to win it? I'm a little surprised to hear 2-1 underdog. This is the first I'm hearing. You're telling me that now for the first time. I'm a little bit surprised by that. I think that it's a little bit closer. Maybe that's something to discuss come Friday's Power Hour, or we get into some $20 we never want to see again, especially since I gained a lot of momentum last week. Back in the black last week. Maybe I'll ride that on some Diego Lopez underdog action here. Because it does seem like we started out thinking of him as a guy who was overperforming. Mm-hmm. And we were just like, well, he can't actually be good, though. And then it turns out like, no, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. And I feel like with Jean Silva, we're getting excited, but maybe we haven't seen everything we need to see yet in order to make some conclusions there. So I don't know, man. I think it's a good fight, a fight that makes a lot of sense for both guys. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I also think that these guys are going to get lost in the sauce this weekend. And if you want to know why I think that, again, go to UFC.com and see where their attention is. I guarantee you, if you go over to any websites for Canelo and Crawford, they're not mentioning, they're not leading with UFC Noche over at the Frostbank Center. They're telling you about the big boxing match. That's what makes me feel kind of bad for those dudes, because we've had this conversation before. Is it better to headline a UFC Fight Night event that's sort of ignored, or to be on the prelims or the undercard of like a big numbered UFC event? Here's one. It seems like this could easily be, a main card event, or on one of the numbered events coming up, and people will get real excited about it, and it could really do something. You put it on this one, and it seems like you're going to have a hard time really breaking through.
Speaking of Canelo Crawford, what's your level of hype? Are you hyped for this boxing match? Because this is, remember, we're doing the crossover. It's TKO, Dana White, Turkey Al Sheik getting together. Two great tastes that taste great together. But it wasn't the smoothest marriage, right?
No.
There's been some reportage on goings on behind the scenes that has told us that maybe Nick Khan had to swoop in and save this thing, and that perhaps Dana White's involvement is more, shall we say, cosmetic than anything else. So is this making a dent, even if it's the top story on what I'm sure is the well-trafficked UFC.com? Is this making a dent in the MMA sphere?
Well, I guess you've already forgotten that the top story is the Brandon Moreno figurine at Walmart. That's number one.
Yeah.
I think that right now you're at such an interesting time with these big boxing events showing up on Netflix that alone creates some excitement, just because the last time we did it, granted, this offers a completely different experience. This is a real ass boxing match between real ass boxers.
Do we need to make that public distinction at this point?
Well, it's sad that is probably going to get less attention than the bullshit ass boxing match between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. But it does make me wonder to what extent you'll get a similar feeling where it felt like back then everybody was all watching one thing and they were talking about it on social media, and you kind of got that feeling of like, oh yeah, this is what it used to be like, you know. And that's an exciting feeling just on its own. Plus, then when you have what's a really interesting boxing match, like can Terence Crawford like go up and weight and hang with somebody like Canelo, who and is Canelo at this point in his career maybe not Canelo anymore? Like there's interesting stuff going on in that boxing match. It'll feel like a really big environment. It'll feel like a really special thing. You'll get an energy coming through the TV screen watching this shit on Netflix that you're probably not going to get from UFC, kind of Noche Fight Night on ESPN Plus. So I think like as far as an experience, that's going to offer something pretty special. And I'm really curious to know what that feels like. I'm really curious to know if you're going to be able to just see by looking around the internet and looking around social media, if it's going to feel like everybody is all tuned into one thing.
A real ass boxing match with real ass boxers.
Correct.
That's Ben Folks' quote. They should blurb that and put it on the poster.
And honestly, that is not something you can say all the time. So like that is something that you would want to highlight. Like if I'm Netflix, I want to find a way to say it, maybe without saying it, but be like, okay, but this one is real though. This fucker counts,
This fucker counts, Ben Folks. That'll be on the poster.
They don't need to say that the other fucker didn't count and that it wasn't really real. But this one is though. They'll
just have you say it. They don't have to say it. They're having you say it. It will be interesting to see what happens with this. I guess, as you said, viewership wise, numbers wise, attention wise, because Netflix seemed like they were jumping in kind of a big way on these big kind of one-off, one night only spectacle live sporting events. They got WWE in addition to that. We thought the UFC had a real good chance to wind up at least partially over on Netflix. That didn't happen. Now you got Dave Meltzer coming out today saying Raw is doing what I think can charitably be described as not great numbers over there on Netflix. Big Dave says prelim numbers have Raw on 9-1 doing the lowest numbers to date on Netflix. So seems like maybe we are also dealing with some diminishing returns there with WWE on Netflix. If Canelo Crawford doesn't go big, and as we sit here on Tuesday, it doesn't totally seem like a given that it's going to, do astronomical numbers. It will be interesting to see what happens with Netflix's appetite for this kind of thing, because I don't know if they were already sort of cooling on it, but they didn't land the UFC. They've got this. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on internally over there right now.
Yeah, and some of those comments that they made about how like, hey, we're looking for big time events, we're looking like that feeling of everybody paying attention to this one thing that we got over here on Netflix. That's what they're looking for. If you don't get it here, and if you look around and you go, all right, didn't get it from a real ass boxing match, not getting it from weekly pro wrestling, did get it from Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. Here's what I'm going to do this with my hands, Chad.
He's doing sort of like prayer emoji / thoughtful deliberations, contemplative.
That's when I start to worry that maybe Netflix will take all the wrong lessons. Maybe those lessons will actually be the right lessons for Netflix. But imagine if that's where they end up sitting around here afterwards, if they're going like, all right, regular WWE didn't do much. Big time boxing match didn't quite measure up. Bullshit ass influencer ass never was really going to be much of anything boxing match. Just blew the doors off the joint. give us more of that. You know, it'll be a great time for some of these dudes who are doing whatever the American version of the dude who owns the shop and show up in Misfits Boxing. If you got a TikTok account with a lot of followers and you think you might be willing to go get the shit beat out of you by Roy Jones Jr. or something, now could be the time.
Bad news for real boxing, good news for Misfits Boxing. Is what you're trying to say.
Good news for that fake ass shit.
I can't imagine television executives taking the wrong lesson from something.
That's a good point. I should have faith in the system.
Yeah.
The system works.
Anyway, we'll get into talking a little bit about what we got from Nasruddin Imavov this last weekend, and then maybe Ronda Rousey saying, quote, "I ain't fighting at the fucking White House." That is coming up right after we do some listener mail.
Listener mail.
First piece of listener mail this week, Ben, it comes to us from John DeGram, who writes, "My fellow Scotsman Paul Craig has decided it's time to hang up the gloves. A sensible decision given his recent run. Let's say he stays retired. How do you assess his career? His MMA resume feels difficult to encapsulate. On one hand, he pulled off some of the wildest, most unlikely wins we've ever seen. On the other, he could look downright lost in the ring with a very limited skill set. How should fans remember Paul Craig?" You know what?
Well, good to hear from Sir John de Graham, 13th century Scottish noble who was killed during the Battle of Falkirk. Haven't heard from him quite as much since the Battle of Falkirk, I'll be honest. We've been out of touch a little bit ever since then, but appreciate hearing from him here.
Fun guy, right? That's how we're going to remember Paul Craig. Fun guy to have around a little bit here and there. Pulled off, as the emailer says, some wacky submissions. Had Jamal Hill's arm flopping around with the face paint, the Scottish accent. Fun guy to have around while we did have him. And I don't know, would you say one of the last true specialists?
I don't know, because there's still some specialists who show up now every now and then. And like, I don't know. I don't think he necessarily deserves to be thought of a specialist, because the guy did have a couple TKO wins in there, and he did seem to show at some points an ability to sort of adjust his game. He also wasn't good enough at jiu-jitsu, I think, to be considered the jiu-jitsu specialist. You know, like it was one of the best chances he had if people would agree to fuck around in his guard, but people have been known to fuck around in his guard and live the tale to tale. So I don't know if I would say that. I will say one of the guys who seemed maybe, I don't want to say not athletically gifted, but not a super special, incredible, once in a generation kind of athlete, to nonetheless have victories over two former UFC champions and like recent former UFC champions in Magomed Ankalaev and Magomed Ankalaev, a current UFC champion, but also Jamal Hill, and both of them, stoppages inside the distance. So it's like that shows you that even though he didn't win them all, he had the ability every once in a while to pull off wins over the best you got. And I think let's not forget, Paul Craig never, to my knowledge, made us feel bad about liking Paul Craig. And God damn it, that is rare enough that we should not fail to mention it.
It's amazing that can be part of your legacy.
Yeah, not even that, like, we came to know you as an especially good person. I have no reason to doubt that Paul Craig might be that. It just feels like we never got to know that much about him, but that we never had reason to think that you were a piece of shit. And that right there puts you ahead of most of the field.
Just not demonstrably bad.
Yeah.
That's good enough to get you a mention at this point in MMA. Next question. I hope Paul Craig doesn't show up in fucking Misfits Boxing, BKFCs. There's no reason for him to do that.
Money, 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 money.
Would you pony up the money for Paul Craig, though, if you're BKFC? Paul Craig's not a guy where we would be like, I hate myself for watching this, but yes, I am going to watch it. That's the criteria that it takes to get money from BKFCs. You have to be that guy.
Yeah, and that, especially Paul Craig's specific skill set, I don't know. Misfits Boxing, however, maybe like because they might fuck around and find something interesting for Paul Craig to do. You know, you could imagine it, but also, I don't even want to start speaking that stuff out into the world. I'd rather let that man go be happy somewhere else.
Next question this week comes to us from Shoulders, Chest, Pants, Shoes, and it is a bit of a long one, so buckle up. Am I wrong for thinking that the UFC booked Patricio Pitbull versus Lucena Keita? Still don't know if I'm saying that right. Probably not. Track record would indicate probably not. On short notice because they wanted to see Keita hurt Pitbull due to Dana not liking PP from the start and him being bristly in multiple organizations. And when the Fat Panther failed to carry out the hit by missing weight, UFC said, fuck it, and cut him. Were both the roster cut and Pitbull's decision to refuse justified considering all of the advantages Keita had from the weight miss, time zone, youth, and that he was unranked at the time post weigh-in scuffle? So let's just well, then he says, B, how do you think this turns out for Pitbull? Do they accommodate him and book him up in the division versus Arnold Allen? Or do they give him the Joe Silva special, a.k.a. treat him like they did Wonder Boy and give him a hard time after he refused to fight Michel Pereira at UFC 291 after he missed weight? P.S., this also reminds me of the time when Dana was on a mission to get Mike Jackson after the CM Punk fight that he hated, and they booked him against Irish KO prospect Dean Barry, who was minus 1,100 and ended up getting DQ'd in the fight after repeated eye gouges. They cut Barry immediately after. So a lot to digest there.
Yeah.
Of course, we were talking about last week, Pitbull was scheduled to fight Lucena Keita at UFC Fight Night 258. Keita missed weight at 149, so only 3 pounds over the division's non-title fight weight limit. And Pitbull said, no way, when he found that out. In fact, I believe, didn't he say, fuck you, man?
Well, I think what he said is he's over there eating baby food, didn't even try to make it. Fuck you, man.
Yeah. Fat Panther. Fuck you.
And seeing him bring up the Fat Panther here now, that's got to be where, man, when Pitbull called him the Fat Panther and then made an AI image of a Fat Panther, don't you think if you're in the other camp, you look at that one and you go, oh shit, that's gonna stick. People like this one. That's gonna follow you.
Mm-hmm. Pitbull said no, wasn't going to take the fight. We've seen obviously people accept fights with opponents that have missed weight by far greater poundage than what happened here. Pitbull was basically like, look, man, I'm a veteran. I'm not here for money. I'm here for legacy. I'm not taking this fight against a guy who I feel like already had the advantages and now he misses weight. I'm not going to fight him. So I guess in terms of answering the questions here, let's almost work backwards. How do you think this turns out for Pitbull vis-a-vis how he is viewed by the UFC?
It's not going to help.
Yeah.
It didn't do any favors for the guy, but also he seems to realize that, right? He definitely seems in the mode right now where he's just sort of like, hey, I don't have time for any more of this bullshit. I'm too old for this. And because he had to know going in how the UFC treats this kind of stuff. His whole attitude about it just seemed like, fuck these guys. I think that he's got to be at some kind of peace at this point with the fact that the fight game could do a lot of shit to you that has nothing to do with fighting. And that a lot of that stuff is out of your control. And the stuff that is in your control is like the same way we would say, hey, if you took that fight against a guy who's 4 pounds overweight and he beats you, nobody going to want to hear about how he's 4 pounds overweight afterwards. You know that. Pitbull knew that. He knew where he was as far as like what the public opinion is at this point in his career. If he lost that one, people would be like, shut up, you suck. You were overrated in Bellator. They wouldn't want to hear it. And so instead, him trying to be like, no, you know what? Fuck that. I'm not going to do that. Put me on a UFC Rio card against somebody else or whatever, or don't, you know? He doesn't seem like he's that worried about it at this point.
And you know what? I don't know that the UFC is really going to be that worried about it either. It reminds me of Don Draper being in the elevator and saying, I don't think about you at all, to that guy in Mad Men. I don't think the UFC thinks about Pitbull at all, honestly. I think that in this instance, maybe they thought they could still get a decent rub off the guy if he did indeed lose to this to a guy that they thought was going to be a pretty decent prospect. But just considering all of the things that are going on with the UFC, I don't think they got time to worry about Pitbull. Like, I don't know that you have time to specifically say, let's punish 38-year-old Patricio Pitbull for turning down this fight. I think if an opportunity presented itself to not necessarily punish him, but to give him a tough fight, they might do that. But I don't think that they're going to go out of their way to do it. I think that in the modern UFC, the demands of the schedule, and everything else that we have going on, I don't think you even have the luxury of being the Joe Silva anymore, of like holding a grudge against one guy and trying to do something to screw him. I just think if you are matchmakers or if you are Dana White, what's the point? What will be the point at this juncture of like trying to screw over Pitbull? It's just, it would almost be more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, and like the point of this question being like, I think they were trying to get him beat up here because they don't like him to begin with. I don't think it was necessarily that so much as they're looking at him being like, what could we use this guy for at this point? Like, we're okay, he's still got something of a name. We put him up against this guy. That guy can beat him up. He gets a little bit of a boost from it, and then we can do something with that guy. I think that's probably still how they're looking at Pitbull.
And whether or not it reminds me of Dana White being on a mission to get Mike Jackson, again, is Dana White even clued in enough? Is he even engaged enough in this product to really have it out for somebody at this point? I don't feel like he is.
Yeah.
I feel like he wants to go to the White House, talk to his boy T-Dog. He wants to do the power slap. He wants to have a ceremonial involvement in the boxing. I don't think he's not sweating it right now. I don't think what's going on with individual fighters in the UFC who probably aren't going to turn out to be big deals anyway.
Yeah.
Next question this week comes to us from Jason Pean and Zykel Minkus wait in a 40-minute line for a churro at Disneyland.
Okay, so this is two people waiting in line for a churro at Disneyland, and while they're waiting in line, they are writing this question to us.
It's getting out of hand.
Okay.
Recently, the MMA gods gave us some fun little gifts when they decided to let Tony Ferguson and Johnny Walker live. But I guess things are back to normal now that the jocks are stuffing the quote-unquote nerds into lockers again.
I get it. Talk about the fighting nerds.
Don't we have the opportunity to turn that around, though, right?
Yeah. Again, though, as much as I love Jean Silva, he seems to be the least nerd of them all. You know?
Yeah, I guess so.
We'll put on the glasses. He'll come out there with him and everything. But he's also barking the entire fucking time. Like, he just doesn't... I mean, I understand we're mainly dealing with the fun name at this point, but he also... everything about him seems extremely menacing and not really that nerdy.
Yeah. I guess you could say that. Last question this week comes to us from Devin Scott, who writes, as I was making my noble transition from mere bitch-ass casual to somewhat more serious connoisseur of the mixed rules cage fighting arts, I recall Shawn Mccoral being a loud and polarizing figure. The problem is I can't remember why. Was he genuinely funny and brash like a discount Chael Sonnen, or more in the crude and offensive vein of your uncle who just discovered Facebook memes? Also, was he actually any good? because in my bitch ass casual days, I truly believed he was going to beat Mark Hunt, and Dana White was a straight shooter in his post-fight scrums. Now, was it McCorkle
Didn't he
who
beat
was?
Mark Hunt? Did he not?
I don't know.
Jesus Christ. Let's see.
Was it
Yeah,
McCorkle?
he submitted him. I believe
Jesus
it was.
Christ, man.
I believe it was the first one that Mark Hunt did when he got over in the UFC, coming in off that Pride contract, and the UFC tried to pay him off. Yeah, and if his first one was against Shawn McCorkle, took him down and got a pretty, basic ass armbar on him. Maybe even like cracked his arm a little bit. Shawn McCorkle was fucking
Jesus Christ,
13-0 at that point, Chad. Can you believe it?
So you're saying that Devin Scott maybe wasn't unjustified in his expectations for Shawn McCorkle.
What was the deal though? He's right about something, right? Didn't he?
Okay. Do you have anything else to say? Because I've tried to ask this question 3 times and you've interrupted me every time.
Well, it's because I'm looking at the man's Wikipedia page, and it is a real ride down memory lane here.
Was Shawn McCorkle the guy who showed up
2 grown children that live with their mother
in the Sherdog forums? Was he the guy who showed up in the Sherdog forums and gave us what was essentially our first sort of like behind the scenes look at how the UFC paid people? Was that McCorkle? Was one of these guys put up a post like that where he was basically like, here's what I made for every fight. Here's what I got for backroom bonuses at the time. And that's basically how I made my money. I want to say that it was McCorkle, but it was so long ago and my brain is fried and is Swiss cheese at this point. So I can't totally remember, but I want to say that was Shawn McCorkle who did that.
Yeah, I feel like he was definitely involved with some sort of controversies, right?
Wasn't he he was regarded as like a big kind of funny oaf.
Yeah.
But also maybe as like kind of a guy who would tell you the truth even if he shouldn't. Is that him?
It does say on his Wikipedia page, it says McCorkle has several nicknames, but Big Sexy is his best known moniker. MMA journalist Ariel Helwani coined his other main nickname, the Curtain Jerker, during a pre-fight interview. He was also known as the Hater early on in his career. Yeah, I don't totally remember. This does seem like a reminder of just how heavyweight was and is and has always been at some point, where a 6'7" dude who seemed like he had some skills could show up and get somewhere for a little while. He was supposed to have some kind of rivalry going with Pudzianowski over there in KSW at some point. Yeah, they fought twice. He submitted Pudzianowski and then lost a decision to Pudzianowski in an open weight fight. So yeah, I don't know, man. You know how sometimes we see like fights that are like 2 or 3 years ago, and you're like, I would have thought that was 8 to 10 years ago. You're asking us here about a guy whose last professional fight, not even his last UFC fight, last professional fight was in 2014. Last UFC fight was in 2011. My God, we've all lived several lifetimes since then.
I'm trying to find out if it was him on the Sherdog forums, and I think it was. I think it was him who showed up and did like what at the time was a fairly revealing post. Ah, yes. Shawn McCorkle gives the real story of UFC fighter pay. This is from 2018.
Okay.
So this is on the Underground. My bad. Not Sherdog, but the Underground. Yeah, this is I am amazed that I was able to remember that.
Strange what gets stuck up there on the old mind brain.
I should just check out now while I'm ahead.
I agree.
All right, that's going to do it for Lister Mail this week. If you have a question, comment, or concern that you want to air to the podcast in future weeks, you know how to do it. You go to the website, co-mainevent.com, and click the link in the top right-hand corner of the screen where it says email the podcast. That'll get you in touch with us. As for right now, we're going to go ahead and move on right after this. All right, Ben. I don't know the tone of Ronda Rousey's voice when she made these comments to the Lapsed Fan podcast. But she says, this is from MMA Fighting Story by Mike Heck. It says, following the birth of Rousey's second child, the former UFC women's bantamweight champion has posted several photos and videos on social media training. Since then, Rousey hasn't publicly confirmed or denied a UFC return, but in a recent interview, Rowdy isn't slamming the door on a return to fighting, but it won't be in front of President Donald Trump in June. I am not fighting at the White House, Rousey said on the Lapsed Fan podcast. I mean, after Mike Tyson being the biggest fight of the year versus Jake Paul, you never say never on a return, but I ain't fighting at the fucking White House. When asked why, Rousey would say no if she was asked by UFC CEO Dana White or UFC Brass, the massive superstar during the UFC's rise, kept it simple and also a bit light. I got better shit to do, Ronda said. My kid needs pasta.
Wow. That's a surprisingly healthy outlook for Ronda Rousey there. I also feel like, isn't it maybe just a testament to Ronda Rousey's star power, its enduring ability, or the lack of star power that we have in the game now, that nobody who actually is involved in any kind of level where that means something has at any point said that Ronda Rousey might come back or that she might fight at this. Dana White, whenever he's asked about Ronda Rousey, is like, she's not fighting again. Like that's over. Ronda Rousey, when she's asked about it, is like, no, I'm not doing it. And we still keep fucking talking about it, keep asking her about it. She doesn't want to do it. She doesn't need to do it, shouldn't do it. If all that stuff that we heard from her about the extent of the brain trauma that she endured and the effects of it that she was feeling, if all that stuff is true, who would even license her to get in there? LOL. I know the answer to that is anybody, because it doesn't fucking matter anymore. But honestly, there's no point at which anybody who actually has a power to make a decision in this regard is giving us a reason to think that Ronda Rousey is a real possibility for these. And yet it keeps coming up. Are we that desperate just for some stars?
What is the regulatory situation when staging a fight at the White House inside the District of Columbia?
They have a commission out there, right? But also
Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, I mean, it's if Donald Trump decided, hey, I don't care what you're saying, we're having Hamzat over here, nobody, or that dude with one eye, or Mago, like Shara Bullet, where people are going like, I don't know if that guy can get licensed. If they were sitting over there at the White House being like, we would like him to have a license. Yeah, he's getting one. That's not going to stop anybody when it comes to this event. As long as we're setting up that cage, Chad, which last I heard weighs 75,000 tons or whatever, and somehow we need to fit it onto the lawn. If we can do all that, then we can get who we want on that fight card.
Ask RFK Jr. if it's cool, and he'd be like, as long as they ain't had no vaccines.
That's your.
They can be on all the steroids they want, like me, but as long as they ain't had no vaccines. I don't know. You got a better RFK Jr. voice?
As soon as you were, I could tell you were gearing up for an impression. I was like, this better be good, because it's a tough one. It's a tough one if you haven't tried it out yet. If you haven't rehearsed it in front of the mirror, because you're just doing Don Fry, is what you're doing.
Yeah, well.
But there's like a warble to his voice, right? I
don't
know. There's a American get cause on. Like, there's something else to it. Like, the best description I heard once was a comedian who said that he sounds like he is riding on a roller coaster that's underwater.
Looks like someone left Mel Gibson in the microwave. That was one that I heard. I mean, the first that I heard of this was that someone had toyed with the idea that you could have two Olympians fight at the White House in Ronda Rousey and Kayla Harrison, which if I were Ronda Rousey, fighting each other. If I were Ronda Rousey and that was the idea they pitched to me, I would get very involved with my kids' pasta also. I wouldn't want any part of that at this day and age, at this time.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted me to fight, to come out of retirement, fight Kayla Harrison. I'd be like, not only do I need to cook that pasta, I'm doing farm to table shit over here.
Mhm.
It's a very involved process.
I have to age the cheese, first of all.
I might fuck around and invent a new kind of pasta just to stay out of that fight. No, come on. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that to anybody.
Remember she recently posted that apology about her Sandy Hook truther post? She recently apologized for that.
Oh yeah.
Think Ronda Rousey? Am I talking with my heart too much here? If I question whether or not Ronda Rousey has been in retirement, living on that organic farm with Travis Brown, maybe having a personal awakening.
You're saying that maybe she wouldn't want to fight at the White House because she don't want to do no Trump supporting bullshit?
I mean, it's kind of this exchange leaves that unclear, right?
Yeah. Real quick, who, if you had to guess, who you think Travis Brown voted for?
The last time I heard about Travis Brown, he was getting arrested by the cops because he was trying to pull some sovereign citizen bullshit during a traffic stop.
That wasn't Travis Brown, man.
Yeah, it was.
That was Dave Herman.
Same dude. See, I had Shawn Mccoral earlier, which is I should have stopped. Like I said, I should have stopped after that.
That's what confused you. It kind of short circuited something in the brain there.
I'm impressed that you remember that was Dave Herman.
I remember the video of it because he posted it, and I'm not the guy who's out there being like, hey, shut up and comply. The cops have the right to physically abuse you. But he posted the video of it where it was like the cops had been trying to pull him over for miles, and he was like, no, the law says I can wait till I get to a well-lighted place, and that happened to be a gas station 3 miles down the road. And then as soon as he got out of the car, he went like running up to them like, I don't have to show you anything. And then they tased his ass, and you were like, well, I'm not saying that that was right, but I am saying that maybe we should have thought that one through a little better. That's what I remember about it anyway.
God damn it. I should have stopped while I was ahead. Meanwhile, Jon Jones, he's still not retired. He's actively training 5 days a week, and he's in the UFC's drug testing pool. This said via a clip posted by a public relations manager. Oh, John, you got on that a little late, bud. Still hoping to fight at the White House. I'm training for the White House event. I'll be ready for that event, but ultimately it's up to the boss. It appears that maybe he said this while wearing a cowboy hat and some huge red sunglasses.
That's what he was wearing. He gave a little presentation kind of thing, right? Did you see that where he's reading off a card kind of poorly to give some award? For one thing, go ahead and lie to me and say you knew that we were still doing the Video Music Awards.
I see that he is standing in front of like a giant MTV Video Music Awards guy, right? Like what used to be the statue of the astronaut with the MTV flag. I could not have told you that we were still doing that. Because what would the awards be for?
Exactly. And where are the MTV people seeing the videos? What channel are they seeing them on? Because I can tell you what channel they're not seeing them on. Are we talking about, are they watching YouTube videos? Is that what they're doing?
I don't know, man.
Because it's just that I really did not even know that was happening at all. I also, I was just like, okay, they introduced him when he came out there as they're like UFC legend Jon Jones. And then he came out there and was just like, okay. Said at some point in the thing, like to clarify with his comments where he said, I am not retired, which then made me go like, what did we do? What was all this? What did it accomplish for Jon Jones? Because
you're talking about all the time that he spent living his best life, monetizing this amazing brand that he's built. That time?
That is what I'm talking about. Because if we think back on the timeline, right? Last November, he fights Stipe, defends the title. 6 months, the UFC is claiming, no, we're going to get the Tom Aspinall fight done. That's a big one. We're sitting around here going, what are the biggest fights the UFC could put together for 2025? And that was at the top of the list. Nothing happens. And then in June, Dana White sits there at a press conference in Azerbaijan and says, oh yeah, Jon Jones called me earlier this week and retired. So yeah, he's not the heavyweight champ anymore. Tom Aspinall's the heavyweight champ now. And then that was Jim moved on. And then Jon Jones, was over there in Thailand fucking around on a Russian Ultimate Fighter that seemed like maybe it fell apart immediately. He was battling these yet still more accusations from the Albuquerque police, his main nemesis. All this stuff is going on. So then he ends up saying, like, he hears, in July that the UFC is going to do an event at the White House on 4th of July. Now it seems like it's going to be sometime around the 4th of July, 2026. And he's like, I'm in. I'm right back. I want in on that. That was like weeks later. So you're telling me you spent 6 months fucking around, gave up the UFC heavyweight title. A few weeks later, it was like, yes, I want back in for that one specific fight card. The UFC said, no, Jon Jones is one person we do not trust to put on that fight card, which has got to sting when they turn right around and be like, Conor McGregor, however, there's somebody that we would put on this thing. And then here he is now still saying, like, I'm training as if I'm going to be at that event. I'm not retired. I'm in the testing pool. I'm doing all this stuff. And so it's like, especially, we remember Ariel Helwani's report on the whole situation was that Jon Jones asked for a whole lot of money, that Deontay Wilder money. The UFC wasn't going to do it. The Saudis came in and said, we'll make up that difference. We'll pay him that money. Then they said, all right, John, you got your wish. Here's all your money to fight Tom Aspinall. And then he said, fuck it. No, I'm retiring anyway. And now, especially if he's in this position where he's like, I'm not retired. I want to fight on that one event. You're not a champion of shit right now. You gave up that belt without a fight. Now you're saying, I want to fight at this one event that the UFC is saying, we don't want you at. So if you do end up talking them into giving you a spot on that card, it will be like as a supplicant, basically. It will be as a challenger begging for a spot. You're not going to get that Deontay Wilder money. They probably are going to want you to fight Tom Aspinall if they did want you to fight on it at all. It's because think about the way the title defense is going to work out, right? Tom Aspinall going to defend against Cyril Gane in October. The heavyweight title probably not going to go up for grabs, too much sooner after that. About once a year is what we're doing now. So the timeline would work out for the heavyweight title to maybe go up for grabs, if not at that event, around that time. And so you'd fight the winner, right? If you're Jon Jones, you either fight Cyril Gane, which who the fuck wants to see that again? Because it was no kind of fight at all to begin with. Plus, if you're saying you've already said you don't want to fight Tom Aspinall, and you're only really coming back around for this one event, why would the UFC book you into a fight on this thing against somebody like Cyril Gane, knowing you're probably going to win the title, and then just piece up out again, and then we're right back where we started with this fucking mess? And instead, if it is Tom Aspinall who comes out of that fight, then you would be essentially negotiating yourself a dramatic drop in pay and spend a year of what's left of your prime fucking around. So you would have talked yourself into less money for the same fight at a worse time for you just because it's at a place that you want to fight. Help me understand how this fits into his I'm always a master planning genius monetizing this amazing brand shit, because it kind of seems like if that's your goal, if that's your whole plan here, it kind of seems like you fucked up big time.
You just painted a very bleak picture.
Tell me I'm wrong.
What part am I wrong about? It was like a wrestling promo just happened up here.
What part am I incorrect about?
If you had thrown in, I'm a simple son of a plumber, let me tell you about hard times, daddy, I would have just put the capper on it. No, I thought it was great. I got nothing to add. You said it all when you said it, man. I mean, these updates haven't gone great for Jon Jones, right? Just the timeline just doesn't look great for him, especially not the reports that he kind of tried to pull a rope-a-dope on the UFC where he's like, haha, give me $100 billion to fight Tom Aspinall and I'll do it. And then they came up with the money from someone else.
Yes.
Yeah. And Jon Jones was like, Jon Jones ran to the airport and was like, I owe some money to some bad guys. I need to get out of the country quick. I need to fly to Thailand immediately. And did that. Then as soon as Tom Aspinall has another fight booked, Jon Jones is like, actually, I'm back, you guys. And I want to fight at the White House.
Right. And they're saying, we don't want you to. Like, you put yourself in the worst possible position negotiating wise. You had everything. You had everybody coming to you being like, we need you to make this one huge fight happen. What do you want to make it happen? You started naming shit. They've improbably met your demands.
In Jon Jones's defense, it's the first time they've ever met anyone's demands ever.
Right. And it was not even like their idea to meet them. It was somebody else stepping in. But still, that happened. And then you went, nah, still don't want to do it. And now you're coming back around when they're saying, we don't want you here. And you're saying, and I'm only here for this one thing. And I've got nothing that you need that I'm bringing to the table. If they did make you an offer, like especially when they put you in this position where you're going like, hey, it's up to the bosses. I know they don't want, but I'm hoping I can convince them to change their minds. Yeah, if they change their minds, it's going to be a lowball ass offer. And you don't have a title. You have a contract that probably says you get paid one thing for, when you're the champion and another thing when you're not. Whatever fight you try to negotiate for, whether you're actually going to fight for the heavyweight title or if they give you something else to do on the fight card or whatever, it's going to be less than that. It's going to be way less money. And you will just have essentially talked yourself out of the big pay raise you spent the last 5 years angling for. That's not monetizing this amazing brand. That is shooting yourself in the balls over and over again.
I need to get out of the country fast.
Let me hop on the back of a motorbike in Thailand.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's Co-Main Event podcast. Thanks to everybody for listening. Remember, we'll be over on the Patreon page all week. We got the live chat tomorrow. Then we got our Doing the Damn Thing show on Thursday, the Power Hour on Friday. We'd love it if you would join us over there. Come join the team, patreon.com/co-main event. We do have fun. If you don't do that, we'll see you right back here next week. We appreciate the support, everyone. Thanks for listening. As for right now, we are done. We are through. We are out. Man, I cannot believe that you had Dave Herman right there in your mind.
Pee-wee. Dave
Pee-wee Herman. Do you have Dave Herman's mixed martial arts record in front of you?
Did he fight Shawn Mccoral? Because it feels like they fought.
It's a walk down memory lane, man. I'll just start. I'll give you some names of guys that Dave Herman fought. Ron Waterman.
Oh, hell yeah.
Fought Don Fry. He fought Soka Jew. Do you remember Jim York?
No.
Second-rate Australian heavyweight who had a couple of fights. Stefan Struve, John Olav Einamo, Roy Nelson, Big Nog, Gabriel Gonzaga. You want to know who his last fight was against?
Who?
Caleb Starnes.
How?
That's what I said.
Even in the same weight class.
According to his Wikipedia page, Caleb Starnes fought at middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight.
Didn't Dave Herman, isn't he the one who declared at one point that jiu-jitsu doesn't work? And then got armbarred by Big Nog?
It's possible. You want to know how old Caleb Starnes is?
How old?
50.
Wow.
Caleb Starnes is 50 years old.
Well, I don't know what that means about how old we are, but it ain't good.
Just a couple of old men sitting over here talking about fights they barely remember. That's what this show is.